Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. Roster drama hitting the timeline this morning with Gen.G after their disappointing results, failing to make it to Masters Bangkok, making a surprising change. Which player are they going to bring in instead? That is a big topic of conversation today, whether they've even made the right move here. That is another conversation too. Big drama though elsewhere in the VALORANT world too. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Just showing this clip in the intro here because it was doing the rounds yesterday, largely because TenZ tweeted about it. And well, this is just VALORANT in a nutshell right now, I guess, is kind of one of the takeaways here. And whether you agree with this or not, obviously this guy's getting shot through a couple of smokes, which is unfortunate, but that is how the game is sometimes. But you know, the initial clip, right, of all the chaos here unfolding on the split, this does sometimes tend to be what VALORANT is like nowadays. Certainly this clip as well on the Lotus I thought was pretty entertaining because this is often what you'll see. Certainly in pro play, things get more and more hectic, understandably so. So, you know, Safe did that tweet about the fact that VALORANT used to promise that gunfights will decide. Nowadays it's more about the utility in play, and you know, I think that's fine. It's somewhat inevitable. It is what it is. But a lot of the old school players aren't necessarily happy with this trend, because even TenZ quote tweeted and says, "The amount of colours and effects that I see on my screen during some rounds, I feel like my colour blindness is getting cured for a short duration." And you know, he says average Valo experience, and quote tweets the tweet that I just mentioned, and even he got Zekin in the reply saying, you know, what are you talking about? State of the game when you're swimming in the gold, basically. But thought this is pretty entertaining between the pair of them. Speaking of Sentinels, this is Sassy yesterday who confirms that his username is going to be changed soon. He's no longer going to be Sassy in the near future, and he's going to remove that from his tag. So he says, yeah, unfortunately I'm going to change my username soon, miss you all, and Sentinels say you'll always be Sassy to us. So I thought that was kind of nice, really. There was a bit of drama as well though going on in Europe right now. So you saw the other day, if you guys watched the video a couple of days ago, that it looks like in the Americas they are going to have some of their matches happening on a different stage setup with no fans, no crowd in attendance. And I think that's a loss, to be honest. I think there should be a crowd, especially because there's not that many games. I don't really mind regular season league matches being behind closed doors or with no fans or with a limited fan base in attendance if there's so much else for people to watch. But the problem is that there's just not that much VALORANT still that happens nowadays. And fans that live near the venue, they want to, you know, see their team play a big game. Obviously, you know, they could potentially go to the playoffs, but what if their team doesn't make it? Or what if their team doesn't make it to, you know, Bangkok, and even then you got to travel an awful long way sometimes to go to some of these events. So I think that's kind of one of the interesting things to me about the format, is that a lot of these teams, because they're not going to play that much and they're not very good, they're not going to make it that far in these tournaments. And as a result, the fans don't necessarily get the chance to watch their team play. I guess VALORANT's idea and Riot's idea tends to be that it's more about VALORANT competitive rather than individual teams. I think they try and push this message of, well, there's lots of VALORANT happening around the world to watch, which there is. But I don't really think that's how sports work a lot of the time. Like, okay, you may enjoy watching VALORANT competitive, but if you've got a favourite team, you're going to want to watch that favourite team more than anything else. And that's understandable. Now, this is interesting, right? So these are the dates. So the EMEA kind of schedule has been confirmed now. And these are the days where each different EMEA team plays their matches. And it's notable that they have scheduled them clearly, deliberately, if you want to say that. Look, this can't be random, can it? Let's be honest. On certain days to maybe benefit some of the fan bases. For example, Fnatic, they play 4 of their games on a Friday, 1 on a Thursday, none on the Wednesday. Karmine Corp, it's 4 on the Friday, none on the Thursday, 1 on the Wednesday. So, you know, you could argue the teams that have some of the bigger fan bases, they have had more of their games scheduled on Friday. Even, let's say, Team Heretics, for example, and Gentlemates, they've had their games, none of their games scheduled for Wednesday. But that means someone's got to play on Wednesday, and the teams that largely play Wednesday are the teams, you could say, with the, you know, lesser fan bases, Apex, Giant.X, among, you know, maybe a couple of others in there as well. The notable one, though, really, is BBL, because they've got 4 games on Wednesday. And the reason why this matters is because on the Wednesday, it seems, there's no audience for the matches on the Wednesdays. So they, you know, are going to be playing pretty much all of their games with no fans, whereas other teams get to play like all of their games with fans. And, you know, whether it matters or not for the actual team themselves, it matters for the fans, because as Sinan here says from BBL, become the most dominant region in terms of player count in EMEA, because Turkey's really cooking right now, become the best team that brings in the most viewers in the region, invest in game changers, become the EMEA champions, invest in regional league, become the EMEA champion, build a roster to bring Turkish culture and other cultures together to achieve all this, yet prevented from competing in front of an audience. It's sad to see that all of this has led to us being denied the chance to compete on stage in Berlin in front of an audience. We have voiced our displeasure, and we hope Riot will address the imbalance in this picture. So we'll see. I can understand what Riot are doing, but equally, it does feel bad. And you can't tell me this is random. It's pretty unlikely to be random. Someone will run a statistical analysis on this, I suppose, and come up with the answers on that. Now, Baby J talks about Envy the other day, and I swear I've seen this story play out a million times. When you've got a Challengers team that's looking really good, they all of a sudden sign for an organization, and things start to fall off a cliff. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen here, but it's kind of remarkable that Rankers won everything for months, and then they sign with Envy and they lose their first series back. Now, this is interesting too, because Valorant Challengers say Envy have acquired Rankers, but the team is still going to be called Rankers for now. So they're actually not Envy yet. And many would ask, okay, well, why? I mean, if I'm Envy and I've just bought these guys, I want my branding to appear on the stream, surely. There's been some debate as to why this takes a lot of time. Apparently, Riot has to approve all of the logos, and then they have to replace the images, and that takes time. They have to update all the content pieces, and it basically takes time and money and some effort, and the contracts have to be all sorted and everything. So presumably they've just said, all right, unlucky Envy, you're not getting it quite yet. You will be on the branding going forwards. But on VLR, they're considered to be Envy, and they played M80 yesterday, and they lost. Now, this is a big series at M80, and I do rate this M80 team, but for Envy or Rankers, whatever you want to call them, to lose in this way was especially notable because they've been cooking lately, and then they play one game under Envy and they lost. It was a really close 2-1. They lost the Abyss 13-11. On M80's map pick 13-10, then they lost the Pearl in a crazy 14-12 overtime. So really close series. Will they make a run through losers? Sure, it's very likely, right? But it's still definitely worthy to say that they've been on a tear as their team as of late. I mean, as Rankers, as you guys can see, they've got this crazy win spree for ages. And then, of course, it's funny, right? Because Envy as an organization, of course, they lost and then they were out of the sport going into franchising. And then it's been Rankers now for ages. And then Envy come back and they lose, right? So, it is what it is. I'm sure they can make a run through the losers brackets, but it's certainly a notable story. The other game that happened was Cubits. They took down QOR. Very, great game entry from Nismo, I think, to close things out in the end. He had a really good performance on the Tejo and on the, on the Breach and the map 1 Haven as well, and on the Tejo map 2. Close forward affair. They lost the map 1 QOR 16-14 on the Haven. They won the split. They then lost the Lotus, and Qubit Academy, they advance in the bracket. So another couple of games coming up this evening. Shopify Rebellion, and then TSM Winthrop. SR play Blue Otter, by the way, if I didn't mention that, and Envy starting in losers, where they will play, presumably, the loser of TSM and Winthrop. As Inspire says, the streak ends 1-2 to M80. Close matches, had a lot of fun being back in the server. But yeah, interesting, right? Because I'm sure they felt they were so confident, maybe couldn't lose to anyone. And then, they obviously sign a team, and then they lose a series. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, Ion is saying, look, calm down, guys. It's early days. But Boostio says, pressure on, guys. Now you're starting to look terrible. Dapper was talking about as well some of the stresses involved, I guess, of coaching the current Qubit Academy team, and even M80 were taking the mick, and they were saying Rankers after siding with Envy, and they tweeted out the kind of famous image of when 100T had Eccles and Baby J for a couple of weeks before then dropping them almost immediately afterwards. Now let's talk about some of the roster drama. I just wanted to say, because a couple of guys mentioned it to me, after yesterday, we had RB and, of course, T-Virus, Luke and everything, and Coco joining the Titan Esports Club team. I was like, wow, that's like a serious roster. Look at all the players. Well, check out All Gamers, because their roster is as follows. They have an immense roster of players. I don't really get it, really, but this is, you don't see this very often, do you? These guys have 1, 2, 3, I mean, I have to actually count them. Okay, 9, 11, right? So they've got 11 players on their roster. 3 of them are considered subs. Everything else is free game. They've got a head coach, they've got 2 assistant coach, 2 other members of staff. How many teams do you see with 16 members of staff on a 5-man Valorant team? Very impressive. Whether it's going to work, I don't really know. But yeah, Chinese region is cooking something up for sure. But this was a confirmation here from Gen.G. Pretty shocking announcement this morning in many respects. That Yeoman is gone from the GenG roster. After the success they had together, they've decided to mutually end the contract with Yeoman from the GenG team, wishing him the best in the future. And that's now, you know, after just a few months, of course, with him on the roster, after the trials and tribulations they've had, after the changes after last year's incredible end to the season, they've got rid of him, right? And they've decided that they're going to part ways. Now, this is very interesting because, of course, at the end of last season, it was looking excellent at the World Championship. They eventually lost in the ends in the group stage to Sentinels, but they won Masters Shanghai, of course, in the ends before that. And this was their team at the time with Texture, Munchkin, Meteor, Caron, and Lakia. Now, things changed in the off-season, right? Of course, T1 decided to come along and make some serious moves. They got Meteor into the team, and their roster ended up as Munchkin, Foxy9, Texture, Caron, and Yeoman, as we just saw. But now Yeoman is gone after some difficult recent results, right? I mean, they obviously played the Pacific kickoff. The interesting thing, right, is though that they lost in the lower final. If you ever look at the bracket again, they lost to DRX and they lost to T1, the two teams that made it all the way. And they lost to T1 in a 3-2 grueler, right? Let's not forget, T1, if this series had gone differently, they could have even not been there in Bangkok, right? I mean, T1 went up 2-0, they nearly got reverse swept by Gen.G, they then won the bind 13-10. In another world, Gen.G win that series, T1 don't even go to Bangkok and don't even win, and who knows how Gen.G could have done if they had gone to Bangkok. But clearly in practice, something's not been going right, and they've decided Yeoman is gone from the team and they're going to make a change. They're only a week away, really, from the season getting underway. So definitely an interesting timing on the move, and it has raised some questions. What are they going to do instead? People have been joking around about Verno, right, saying that, well, Verno doesn't need to speak Korean because he doesn't speak anyway, so, you know, get the contract signed and he's going to be sorted. Don't really think that's going to happen, but yeah, intrigued to your thoughts in the comments because it's been a long time since Gen.G failed to qualify for Bangkok. They could have made this change a while ago. They haven't. They've waited until now. Now they've made the change, basically a week away from starting the season. So yeah, very interesting what's happening behind the scenes over there. Couple of scrimbucks to go through to close out the video. Edward up 10-3 on Paper Rex as of yesterday. Sentinels 13-3 up on Furia. We had Sentinels 13-8 up on NRG as well. And we also had a scrim where NRG were up 6-2 and then they were pegged back to 12-12 by Sentinels. And the final one, speaking of Sentinels, was this, which was their scrim against 2G, which, yeah, was pretty ugly. It was 17-1 at a time. And then, fair play, 2G are back. They won a second round. So 2G getting 2 rounds on the board. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in a comment. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.